time being for EU implementation, or some others might need to be reviewed and potentially revised. So with the help of our consultants, we would also like to look in a more detailed way into the technical issues that are involved in a potential implementation of these standards in the EU context. Okay, and as I mentioned already, we plan then to launch the second task force on EPSAS standards. This is meant to be a more technical task force, and we would like to scrutinize the existing EPSA standards one by one with the help of experts from our EU member states. All right, so then a few words on what we plan to address in the Commission communication that we are currently drafting. We would like to outline the legal basis for future EPSASs. We would like then to put forward our ideas concerning the governance structure and the necessary governance processes, as well the key governance principles that should be there to govern the whole standard setting process. Of course, we would like in this communication, to the extent possible, to outline the next steps of the project, including a roadmap. I mentioned the impact assessment that we have been working on, as well monitoring and other issues that may come up. So then the framework regulation itself, this is because this is also a piece of work we have been working almost in parallel to drafting this communication. There we would like to establish a few key accounting principles. We would like to confirm the reference to EPSASs as a starting point, as a reference point for the development of European standards. Define the governance arrangements, of course, as well as then decide the standard setting process according to which these future EPSASs will be legislated in Europe. So, as regards the implementation of EPSASs, it was already mentioned in our study. What we propose is a stepwise implementation, gradual, possibly phased in all member states, however, and with the aim to have them implemented, if everything goes well, by 2020. Strong EU governance is, let's say, a precondition for before making any further step towards the adoption of EPSASs, and taking into account clear needs like accruals-based accounts and financial reporting, double entry bookkeeping, harmonizing financial reporting across the EU, and to the extent possible keeping up with the international standards for the very sake of international comparability and consistency with the ESA national accounts principles. It's also another important issue in this context. Just a few useful links. There is a link to the first Commission report and the staff working document, a link to the web page when you can also find the consultation paper for our public consultation on EPSAS governance. So this is where we currently are. This is what we have been and are working on. And although it may look simple, I think almost every step in this project, it's quite a challenge. So thank you again for the invitation and your attention.
My objective today is to provide, I would say, an overview of the global development in government accounting, including a look at the key conclusions of the global survey that PwC issued in April earlier this year. The survey included a total of 100 countries, as you see on the map, coming from all continents and all levels of development. I will talk about the current accounting and reporting practices and the medium-term changes that are expected in these areas. We will also examine the benefits and the challenges of accrual accounting implementation based on IPSAS, International Public Sector Accounting Standards, or equivalent standards. And finally, we will broaden the discussion by talking of the added value that accrual accounting can bring in a wider finance function. So, for the first part of our survey, the objective was to establish a baseline understanding of the current accounting, reporting, and budgeting practices, and of the practices expected in 5 years' time. When we look at the accounting landscape, well, we have really a full spectrum of practices. We have those countries using cash accounting, and you know that we have many of them. Then we have what I would call hybrid practices, often referred to as modified cash or modified accrual. And then we have, at the other side of the spectrum, we have those countries applying accrual accounting, including those applying IPSAS or equivalent standards, or IFRS as adapted for the public sector, like is the case here in the UK. When we see the results of our survey, only 26% of governments surveyed, so roughly 1 in 4, currently apply accrual accounting. The majority, 54%, use cash-based accounting practices, which, fail to capture information on public sector assets and liabilities, and therefore present a very short-term view of public finances. However, when we look at the picture in 5 years' time, we see a clear trend, with many countries initiating accounting reforms and moving towards accrual accounting. In total, 37 countries are intending to make the move, representing an increase of 142% compared to the situation today. So really, there is a clear trend towards accrual accounting. Now, when we look at the split between the OECD countries and the non-OECD countries, so the so-called developed and developing countries, the major shift is expected in non-OECD countries, with often IPSAS serving as a reference point. 50% of non-OECD countries expect to make the move in the next 5 years. Again, we have a very clear trend, with accounting reforms often initiated as part of a wider finance reform funded by organizations such as the World Bank, the IMF, or other donors. Take an example. If we now look at the geographical distribution, when